And we're back on the Sunday before Christmas 2025, like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Sunday evening just before Christmas here with me in New York. But once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. It still feels a little somber and a little heavy. And right now on Paramount Plus, and I believe later on broadcast television, CBS, they're doing a Rob Reiner tribute, kind of a Rob Reiner, a life in pictures. And it will be a lot of the famous people who worked with him, who knew him, who loved him, as if he were a member of their family. In some cases, not all. But one thing you know about this man, Rob Reiner, is that there are very few people he did work with who have not just showered him in bouquets of praise. What a stand-up guy, what a fundamentally decent person he came across to them. And you have different experiences with different people, but the common theme with Rob Reiner, it's like listening to people talk about Audrey Hepburn or Paul Newman. He just seems to have been very, very close to how we, as younger people finding out who he was, and, a meathead and All in the Family, but that he just seemed like a really good guy. Hard worker, but somebody who also didn't want his casts overloaded. Annette Bening told a story about 30 years ago, a little over 30 now, the movie American President, which came out 30 years ago, that he was concerned that maybe they were pushing each other or they were being pushed too hard, and he wanted to make sure that the cast and crew got to, spend holidays with the family. He didn't want them working through the holidays because it seems crazy. Again, they're all making millions of dollars, whether it's today, whether it's 30 years ago, when you're at the level of Annette Bening, Michael Douglas, Michael J. Fox, Martin Sheen. But there was still a sense of humanity and community and a feeling that this is a special time, and we don't have to work 18-hour days on the 24th of December and the 25th of December. But one particular gentleman who I know took part in this, Ron Howard. It's unbelievable. I still I don't get mixed up, but I still say Ron Howard and Rob Reiner, and I have to fight myself because I'm talking about the movie Parenthood, which was Ron Howard, and I would just occasionally drop in a Rob Reiner. People would be like, bro, what are you doing? I'm sorry. But one person who was interviewed in the Rob Reiner Life in Pictures short documentary, I think it's an hour, is Kiefer Sutherland. And Kiefer Sutherland, it's a little kind of almost under the radar, a little bit sneaky, that Kiefer worked with Rob Reiner in two of his most memorable films, Stand By Me and A Few Good Men. So that's 6 years apart. But the reason why I brought up Kiefer in particular and didn't focus on Michael Douglas, Albert Brooks, some of the other big names that took part in this Rob Reiner tribute retrospective. Today is Kiefer Sutherland's birthday. And for someone who I have always been an enormous fan of, I haven't really focused on him that much in this podcast. I've discussed The Lost Boys, but other than that, his name, it came up in the Dark City episode, but not as often as you would expect from an unabashed fan of his, a big fan of his dad. So we're gonna change that today. Because on Kiefer Sutherland's 59th birthday, I want to talk about him. I want to talk about his career and something that Rob Reiner dealt with for his whole life is when you are in the same or similar enterprise as, it doesn't have to be a father, it could be a mother, it could be a brother, it could be anyone who is related to you that ends up in the same business or very close to. And Rob Reiner's father, Carl Reiner, was a legend. He was a comedy legend. There were people that would put him, not in terms of being a filmmaker, but a peer of Mel Brooks, who he worked with for decades. Carl Reiner had an extraordinary career, regardless of what any of his kids ended up doing. Remember, he was in, maybe you don't remember this, in Ocean's 11, he was part of the group that George Clooney put together, and I felt that he was cast because of his connection to showbiz, to Vegas, doing shows with Mel Brooks for so many years. And Rob Reiner emerged from his father's shadow. Kiefer Sutherland's father, Donald, arguably cast a broader shadow. Donald Sutherland is the answer to a trivia question, and if anybody doesn't agree with this, they will get very serious pushback. Not physically. But Donald Sutherland is the greatest actor who never got the courtesy of a single Best Actor nomination. And when he passed, and Kiefer Sutherland is somebody that is not really, you'd think that he would be a techie with, playing Jack Bauer on 24, and they were dealing with technology that was cutting edge and groundbreaking and ahead of its time when that show premiered 24 years ago. But then as the series went forward, you would have thought that Kiefer Sutherland would have been a techie. I don't think that guy even owned a cell phone until the mid to late 2000s. He really resisted media in that form. He wasn't interested. But eventually he did go onto social media, but he posts so infrequently. It's like Adam Sandler. Whenever Adam Sandler posts, you're worried that somebody died, because he had like 5 posts in a row over a year and a half where he was paying tribute to someone who had passed. So when Kiefer Sutherland posted a picture a year and a half ago, I guess it might have even been, I'm not sure, I apologize. I think it was 2024. He posted a picture of his father holding a small child, who I quickly realized was Kiefer Sutherland. And I immediately felt a chill and sadness, because I knew that he would be posting something like this if his father had passed. And unfortunately, that's what it was. And he wrote in there that my father was one of the greatest actors to ever work in the medium. And you could feel the pride coming through the screen. And if it was in print, you would have felt it. It was just something about the way that he said it. I've always read words like that, but coming from him, it hit different, because I could hear Kiefer saying it in the grip of the depression of having to say his goodbyes to his father. I mean, Donald Sutherland lived a full life. I think he was 87 when he passed. But still, he was working not that long before he died. He appeared to be in good health. Kiefer was broken up about it. So the first time I ever saw Kiefer Sutherland in a movie, in a TV show, or in any form of media, was a film that I wasn't able to get an answer from my mother how I even ended up seeing this film in theaters. You would expect someone like me, I must have gone to the movies all the time as a kid, but I really didn't. I was interested in movies, but me actually going to the theater to see something, not that often. I saw big movies. I saw Grease. I saw OG Superman, in both cases, when they were in theaters. I saw Chariots of Fire, famously. I saw The Natural with my dad. But not that many other films. Rocky III, my parents took me to see. But in that era, in between The Natural and Rocky III, I saw one other movie in theaters. And it was the Neil Simon, was it Herbert Ross? I want to say that it was Herbert Ross, but I could be wrong about Herbert Ross. But I saw the film Max Dugan Returns. And Max Dugan Returns is Jason Robards plays this wayward guy who was a con artist who ended up making hundreds of thousands of dollars, but he's been estranged from his daughter, played by Marsha Mason, who at that time was already a 4-time Best Actress nominee. She didn't win. She should have won at least one of those, I would think. And Matthew Broderick plays the son. Jason Robards plays the grandfather, and there's a lot of strife with with the mom and with her father. But Marsha Mason's character meets a police officer, and it's played by Donald Sutherland. And Donald Sutherland has a son who plays baseball. Matthew Broderick's character also plays baseball. Donald Sutherland's son in the movie is played by Kiefer Sutherland. I want to say that was Kiefer's film debut. He would have been 15. If he was born in 1966, he would have been probably 15. But he actually, to me, looked a little bit younger. I think the film came out the same year as War Games, but if it came out in 82, maybe he could have been slightly younger. Maybe the film had some delays, but I didn't recognize him. I didn't know, and at that point, it didn't even look like, oh yeah, of course, this must be Donald Sutherland's real-life son. I didn't look into any of this stuff. There's no internet in 1982 or whatever year it actually was. But I loved that movie, and that was the first time I saw Kiefer Sutherland in a film. He didn't really have much to do. He's almost like the enemy pitcher because he's on the other team, and Matthew Broderick plays a kid who really sucks at baseball, but because his grandfather has $700 and something thousand in 1981 or 82 or 83, he can hire the best hitting coach you've ever heard of, Charlie Lau, to teach him how to hit. And that's a movie that I love, and I don't understand how my mom took me to see it. We must have been at the mall, and she just decided, you know what, Jay, let's go see a movie. Because I told her, I said, I don't remember that film at all. You just described it to me. I have no idea what you're talking about. I think she thought I just made the story up. But the next film that I saw with Kiefer Sutherland is going to be the first film that many of you saw, and that would be Rob Reiner's Stand By Me. and the character he plays of Ace. Kiefer has talked about how irredeemable Ace is. And he contrasted it not that many years after, because The Lost Boys, the best vampire movie ever made, once again, come at me, bro. He plays a bloodthirsty, vicious, killing vampire. But Kiefer Sutherland would say, that guy actually has more humanity than that fucking scumbag Ace who I played in Stand By Me. And it is a character that, in his own way, he should be the son, and you can't really retrocon this, it'd be fucking great. He feels like he would be Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men. This would be his son. Maybe he's Ace Jessup. He's the son of Colonel Nathan Jessup. You can't handle the truth. You want me on that wall. That's how irredeemable the character is. And Kiefer talked about it. He was even joking around, saying, think about how many people, presumably David, in The Lost Boys has fucking brutally murdered and ripped their throats out. I see him as more human than Ace in Stand By Me. But part of it, it's the way the role was written and the way Stephen King had to set up an antagonistic, also kid figure, teenager. He's not in his 20s. He's a kid who is really, really bad. But the way that Kiefer Sutherland plays the character, he just had a perfect face. There are some people that were meant to do certain things. And Kiefer Sutherland arguably has an even better face for the movies than his late great father. He just had a presence on screen. It's very difficult to describe and almost impossible to quantify. He had the right look, and he had the kind of versatility and the ability to inhabit characters and make them feel like no one else could have played this role. And there was a wide range of parts in his career where you can say that. There aren't that many other actors that I would make that point. I don't even know that I've made that point. But that is how distinctive he was and is. Even in his older era, a smallish role in Clint Eastwood's Juror Number 2 from last year. And that's something that came about because once Kiefer kind of made it far enough in the business where people were seeking him out as opposed to him, and there's nothing wrong with this, having to introduce himself as Donald's son. But Donald Sutherland and Clint Eastwood were long-standing friends going back to the 60s, and they made a movie that Clint was always a big fan of, Kelly's Heroes, in the early 70s. And then they did Space Cowboys in 2000. But Kiefer got to know Clint as a very young man, and then in each of their older eras, and he had always said to Clint, I'd love to be in one of your movies. Just please keep me in mind. And it's kind of a little bit funny that he would be begging Clint Eastwood to be in one of his films, but that he admitted he talked about it recently. He said, sure. I said, I just wanted to be, my dad worked with you twice. I want to say that I worked with you once. Can you cut me a break? I'm sure it was funny. But Clint cast him in a smallish role in Juror Number 2 as alcohol counselor for the main character, the Nicholas Hoult character of Justin Kemp, who is going through a very serious crisis of conscience in the world of the film. And Kiefer, it's a small role, but he just has gravitas. And he had it when he was a kid. The character of Ace is more terrifying in Stand By Me because it's Kiefer, because he looks like there's more going on behind those dead eyes than there actually is. He just had and has a certain look and a certain presence and a standing and a way of reading lines and engaging with the camera. It's not something that everybody can do the way that he has been able to. And I mentioned that A Few Good Men, it's a relatively large supporting role. He was one of the soldiers, serving under Jack Nicholson. I'm not even joking about the idea that Ace could be the son, but he's serving under, and he's not in any danger. Like, his character was not, he wasn't beating the shit out of this Santiago or hazing him. But if he, at least I think that he may have fucked with him a little, but he was not the one on trial. But the way that he reads his lines in that film, you could see that he wants to say more than he does, that he really didn't respect Santiago, and as he puts it, hey, he's dead. That's a tragedy. He's dead because he had no honor, he had no code, and God was watching. And the ice-cold way in which he read those lines. Yes, Rob Reiner is directing him, I understand that. But there was something in the inflection, the intonation, that's the actor. And there are very few actors who even could have delivered that line as effectively as Kiefer Sutherland did. So there are a lot of movies of his that many people love that I was not into the Young Guns movies. It's right in the middle of my wheelhouse, right? Generation X. I'm supposed to be a fan of those, especially because I'm a fan of Westerns. I have not seen 1 minute of either Young Guns or Young Guns 2. I remember people going berserk because John Bon Jovi was on the soundtrack to the sequel. I remember seeing posters all over Manhattan. Blaze of Glory. I wasn't interested. They mostly got trashed by critics, and I just wasn't into seeing them. But I know that Kiefer was for sure a highlight, and there are people who would say, that's one of my favorite movies, the original. Flatliners, I also wasn't interested in seeing. It was a box office hit, and Julia Roberts, again, we could joke around because she was supposed to marry Kiefer Sutherland, and then she did her own runaway bride routine and hooked up with his buddy from the Lost Boys, Jason Patric. But the good news to that is that all these years later, they're all friends. It must have been horrendous back then. I can't even imagine being someone already as successful as Kiefer Sutherland, and the woman you're about to marry runs away. What the fuck, man? He shrugged it off. He shrugged it off like David and the Lost Boys would shrug off a bee sting. That's some level of toughness that a lot of people don't have. I mean, there are people who would have completely fallen to pieces and just given up on everything. Sit home, do nothing. But I guess he's made of strong stock, like his father. So I was not a fan of, he did a lot of movies I didn't really like. The Cowboy Way with Woody Harrelson was a film that had been buzzed about. People thought this is like an urban Western, a little bit of a comedy. Kind of a Coogan's Bluff, speaking of Clint, one of those vibes where people fish out of water in the big city, but that really didn't work. He did a film with Ray Liotta not long after Ray did Goodfellas, Article 99. That I like, but it didn't really make much of an impression despite, pretty good reviews. But he was always working, and he was always trying to see good guy, bad guy, worse guy. And he did the movie with Sally Field. I don't remember the name of it offhand. I saw it in the theaters. It was a John Schlesinger film. There's a name I haven't mentioned since the Marathon Man episode, where he plays one of the most disgusting villains. This is a guy that Frank Booth would raise a glass to. Frank Booth from Blue Velvet, the single worst villain in history. Don't you fucking look at me! What was his name? Carl Doob? Freddie Doob? Something really a bad name. And this guy assaulted and brutalized Sally Field's daughter. And man, it's not even a good movie, but Kiefer's performance, again, it's like this could be the guy from Stand By Me, all grown up 10 years later. He is horrifying and just disgusting, and you hate him as much as Sally Field hates him. That's on him. That's on Kiefer for being able to kind of bring this awful character to life, and unfortunately making us understand, yeah, this guy is even worse probably than we know. Worse than we could possibly imagine. Just fantastic performance. And, if I'm asked what's my favorite, I have to pick one Kiefer Sutherland movie. I got to go with Dark City, one of his favorites from his filmography. It's one of those films where interviewers, if they're clever, they know to ask him about that film in particular. And this was a movie where he plays a very much gray area character. He plays a doctor named Dr. Schreiber. And we seem to be on Earth, but it turns out, spoiler alert, we're not really on Earth. We're on some other territory, or if we are on Earth, there are these aliens that have ability to shift and bend space and time. And you really don't know until very late in the movie Dark City, is Dr. Schreiber on the side of the humans, or is he on the side of this race of alien beings called the Strangers? And in his role as Dr. Schreiber, Kiefer, he affects very strange mannerisms, almost alien-like, and his speech patterns are completely different from anything else that he did. And there is There's just so much skill to the performance. The way that he moves his eyes, the fact that how many times did Kiefer play alpha kind of characters, very active, aggressive characters. In this film, it feels like Dr. Schreiber is backing up for the entire movie. That he is scared of everything. He's scared of the aliens, known as the strangers. He's scared of the humans. And whose side is he going to be on ultimately? Is he that afraid of the strangers that he's going to back them, that he's just going to keep sending humans into what amount to traps? Or is he going to rebel and try to do the right thing? And that is a movie that has a lot of answers, but it doesn't actually have all of the answers. It still leaves a lot to the imagination. And he always talks it up every chance he gets. You know, it's one of the greatest science fiction films ever made. That's a movie that I've always been so proud of, and what Alex, the filmmaker Alex Proyas, what he was able to do, and the cast, and everything is just so great. The noir atmosphere, the mystery, just a tremendous film. And you know, when he did A Few Good Men, his career was still rising. It felt like he had already been around forever. And I don't even mean Max Dugan Returns. So when you're younger, memory works in a funny way, because both Tom Cruise and Kiefer Sutherland, Tom obviously was already higher on the Hollywood mountain, but to me it felt like Tom Cruise had been around for longer than he had. He had been a huge star for 6 years when A Few Good Men came out. And Kiefer, you know, roughly the same. He was working steadily and did a lot of big movies after The Lost Boys. He did Bright Lights, Big City with Michael J. Fox. That's a good movie that didn't do well at the box office. It was a huge runaway best-selling novel by a guy named Jay McInerney. And it just came out and it died at the box office. It was promoted as if it was a thriller. That's just not a good idea. If you're going to make people think they're going to see a thriller, it can't be a kind of slow, methodical drama about an alcoholic drug addict writer trying to not have writer's block while being an alcoholic and a drug addict. And Kiefer Sutherland plays like a party type guy who somehow manages to balance all the drinking and all the drugs, and he seems to be doing okay. Well, Michael J. Fox's character of Alex was he Alex? No, he was Alex on Family Ties. I don't remember the name of his character. Jamie. His name is Jamie. He's bottoming out while Kiefer Sutherland is still living the high life. But that's a movie where Kiefer's character is not really a good guy, but he looks like the kind of guy we would want to meet, and he looks like the kind of guy that we already know. Again, the skill, the craftsmanship in the performance. But something happened in Hollywood and in the movie and TV industry over 25 years ago. People's thought process regarding TV began to shift. Because if you go back to the 60s, 70s, and 80s, when movie stars could no longer be movie stars or were no longer being offered lead roles, they went to TV. It was an admission of defeat when Rock Hudson did McMillan and Wife. That, you know, Rock's done. That's it for him. He goes to TV. So there was this idea that if you suddenly took a lead in a big TV series, well, he's past it. He's, you know, whatever. So Kiefer Sutherland took the lead role in the TV show 24. And he was only 34 going on 35 when he took the role, but he seemed older, not because he looked older, but because he had been around so long already, because he was so young when he hit the scene. He was still a teenager when he shot Stand By Me. He was 25 when he did A Few Good Men. It's just crazy, but that's exactly what it was. So 24, to me, is one of the greatest TV shows in the history of television, even though it falls apart after season 5. The first 5 seasons are so good. They are so riveting. The action, it's like out of a Die Hard movie, and this is a weekly TV series. His turn as Jack Bauer, I mean, it's iconic. He's extraordinary. And you can't imagine anyone else in that role. In a similar vein, different kind of show, James Gandolfini, who was not offered The Sopranos first, not surprisingly, because he was not a huge star. He was a guy who was known in Hollywood and known to people like me for roles in Get Shorty and True Romance, you know, films like that. Angie with Gina Davis. But Ray Liotta was offered Tony Soprano. Liotta didn't want to do TV because he wanted to just keep making movies. There's nothing wrong with that. But looking back on it, I mean, he couldn't possibly have done better than Tony Soprano than James Gandolfini. Gandolfini was born to play that role, but it is interesting to ponder, what would Ray Liotta have done with that role? Because maybe they would have cast Gandolfini as one of the other people in the crew. It's interesting to think about. But Kiefer killed it, pun intended, on 24, playing Jack Bauer as a hyper-competent, super intelligent, just an all-encompassing badass that you don't never want to meet this guy. Yeah, he might be okay with short stretches, but this guy is ruthless, merciless when he has to be. He's not above killing thousands of people if it's going to suit whatever his end game is, which usually is something as noble as preventing the United States from, dropping into the Atlantic Ocean or the Pacific Ocean or the Gulf of Mexico, whatever. The stakes got higher as the series went on. And he is so sharp, never takes an episode off. And I just thought, what an incredible, as if he needed to show me just how great he could be. But he is just phenomenal in, the first 5 seasons. Then the show kind of jumped the shark. I thought season 6 was so bad to me, I couldn't continue with the show. I didn't watch any of the revivals or anything like that. But then when he did Designated Survivor, which ran for, a number of years also, people just kept waiting for that guy to admit that he was really Jack Bauer and let's fucking go. But alas, it didn't happen. But while he was making 24, he was still doing other things, although 24 took up crazy amounts of time. That was a very difficult show to shoot, not surprisingly. But it was great seeing him pop up in small roles in other big films of the early 2000s. In particular, Phone Booth. He plays the guy on the phone with Colin Farrell, who is literally stuck in a phone booth for the whole fucking movie. He ain't going anywhere, or there's going to be some dead people and then himself. And it's Kiefer on the line, mocking him, trolling him, ripping on him. Oh, Stewart, you tell me, how many women have you screwed behind the back of your... Oh, he's just awful. But we kind of are on his side because the character that Colin Farrell plays in that film, he starts the movie, he's not really a very good guy. Nah, no thank you. You know what, do what you will with this asshole. But then he has another tricky role in a serial killer film which is decent, it's not great, Taking Lives. And it was Angelina Jolie and Olivier Martinez and Ethan Hawke. And Ethan Hawke was brilliant casting. I'll say no more. That was brilliant casting of Ethan Hawke in that movie. But Kiefer's role we think is going to be bigger than it is, but just seeing him with all the good baggage that he brings to the table, even at that point in his career, 22 years ago, he only pops up a couple of times, but he is riveting because it's Kiefer Sutherland. And I don't remember even seeing him before the movie. I didn't know he was in the film. It's kind of like an extended cameo. But again, the presence, the gravitas, and the line readings, which will always make you think there's more going on than there actually is. What a great speaking voice, right? You can't teach someone to have a great speaking voice. You look at Denzel, you look at Mel Gibson, Matt Damon, George Clooney. Perfect speaking voices. You can't teach it. You can maybe manipulate a little bit with your speech, but if you have a speaking voice like Kiefer Sutherland, almost everything is going to sound better. And if he wants, it's going to sound more sinister when he says it than when you or I say it. So, he's continued to work, but I wanted to also mention one other film of his that I'm a fan of. In 2005, 2006, he actually, he bought a band, or he heavily invested in a band that he was a fan of. And this is the kind of thing when you have fuck you money that you can do. And if it doesn't work out, not that you like losing $1 million, but you're going to be okay. So Kiefer was an enormous fan of this indie band called Rocco DeLuca and the Burden. And Rocco DeLuca being the lead singer. And they had a song that Kiefer thought should have been a bigger hit, I guess, called I Trust You to Kill Me. That's literally the name of the song. So Kiefer kind of took control of the band. And he decided to let a camera crew follow him and the band around as they toured Europe. I want to say this was in between seasons 3 and 4 of 24, but it could have been between seasons 4 and 5. I'm a little fuzzy on this. But the Kiefer Sutherland of that era, no offense, he seemed a little bit like a train wreck. And I give him credit for not demanding that the filmmaker, whose name I can't remember, not include some really crazy shit that he got himself up to. I mean, he was out of control when he was drinking, and the band, he's busting his tail. He's on the street handing out flyers, and most people don't even recognize him. He's like, hey, we got a show here. Would you like a free ticket? This is a new indie band from California. And some people actually, Have I seen you on TV? Yeah, I've done a few things. He's so unassuming, like you'd think that he wouldn't be that, but he was almost embarrassed when people recognized him. So that movie, this documentary, it's actually called I Trust You to Kill Me, and the kind of DVD in the day, Kiefer was front and center because even though it's kind of about the band, it's more about a Hollywood actor near the top of his craft, just taking 3 months to tour Europe with this random band that he is like the #1 fan of. Speaking of Rob Reiner, like Misery, right? Annie Wilkes, the #1 fan of writer Paul Sheldon. But that film is fascinating because you see Kiefer, warts and all. He was going through a lot of stuff, and honestly, he comes across like a man almost screaming for help. And in real life, he did get help. And I don't know if he really went to rehab, but he seems like he is much healthier and in a much better headspace, the last 10 to 15 years than he was in the mid-2000s. Hey, working on a show like 24, you're probably on the verge of burnout almost all of the time. That was a crazy show. And if you have never seen the show 24, just watch the first 10 minutes of the first episode of the first season. I dare you to turn it off. That's how gripping that show was. Within 10 minutes of episode 1, you are hooked. 3 different people I put onto that show, they all said the exact same thing. Within 10 minutes, there's 3 different things going on, and I got to find out what's going to happen. And it was Kiefer at the center that made it sing. He is a great actor, and his father was a great actor. And, he carved a different path for himself. He didn't take the path of his dad. As much respect as he had for him, he wanted to do his own thing. And you don't necessarily have to tell the story of his father to tell the story of Kiefer, a vibrant, distinctive talent who did take part in 2 of Rob Reiner's finest films. So a happy last birthday of his 50s, 59, to Kiefer Sutherland, born December 21st, 1966. This has been episode 659 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all so much for spending some of your last Sunday before Christmas with me here in New York. If you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or the others in which we're hosted, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Until then, peace.